Go a long way further if you can. I applaud game companies that do that. That's from David Braben in an interview with TechRadar in 2021. He was discussing space games, specifically Starfield, but also touched on No Man's Sky. I think it's a very, very good quote and one I've referenced a number of times before. In short, the whole thing seems to come down to ambitions as well as commitment. I feel then that it's a very valid comment to bring up for two different reasons. One, it's talking about space games. Two, it comes from someone who is arguably the father of space games. So then, this brings us very nicely onto that great space game, No Man's Sky, and their latest addition to the title, Leviathan, an expedition that will grant players access to a space whale of all things. Now, one thing I really want to talk about here is that idea of ambition, as well as the idea of taking risks. And it's very much risks here that are on the cards. The latest update forces players into permadeath. In fact, permadeath is written into the core of this particular expedition. It creates the concept of a death loop. In short, the way to make progress through the expedition is by dying. In fact, perhaps a better way of describing the whole thing isn't true permadeath, but rather a roguelike. Essentially then, every time you die, you will respawn at a set point in the expedition. You'll also lose everything in your inventory, as well as everything in your ship. Your ship and you are basically restarting from a fresh point. However, you will find within your inventory core memory fragments. These come from what No Man's Sky is calling a previous iteration, essentially your previous playthrough. And activating these memories will grant you access to key technologies that you previously had. Now there is a pretty decent story to all of this. I'm not going to play through too far on the video in the background right here. In fact, you'll notice that I've stuck to very early sections in the expedition because I don't want to spoil it for you. Suffice to say that the story does include interactions with the Anomaly as well as Polo, and will ultimately lead you to a new frigate, which comes in the form of a space whale. And bonus points to anyone who remembers space whales in that 80s game, Starglider 2. For me then, one thing that Hello Games have demonstrated over the past few years is the capacity for both innovation as well as ambition. They never sit back for very long, instead opting to push the game forward, and they always seem to do it in a new direction, something often surprising as well. After all, over the past year, Hello Games have released 4 separate expansions. These cover massive graphics enhancements, planetary settlement management, robotic companions, as well as new Outlaw Systems, and that's just scratching the surface of the different elements that each of these updates includes. And let's not forget, there's been expeditions, 5 separate ones in fact, each of which have been unique and interesting. Now, perhaps the expedition which captured most people's attention was the one which allowed players to access the Normandy, that famous ship from the Mass Effect series. In fact, that reward was so popular that Hello Games introduced it a second time not too long ago. But what really gains my attention here is Hello Games' willingness to take risks. And by risks, I mean trying something a little bit different, or something very much different, something out of the left field. This, I feel, is what's happened with Leviathans and the whole death loop mechanic. Of course, a death loop or even a roguelike is hardly original. They've been around for many years, but it is something unique when it comes to No Man's Sky, something very new. And trying something like this, which hasn't been done before within a game, can come with certain risks. You don't know really how players are going to respond to it. It turns out though that players apparently have responded very favourably. You can see right here, at least on Steam, that player numbers have very close to doubled since the introduction of this expedition. And I can actually see why. Now, I've spoken before how I play No Man's Sky in a previous video. One thing I really do enjoy doing is the whole exploration aspect. I do this in creative mode just because of that zen-like experience. It makes exploration that much more, how should we say, intuitive, more smooth flowing with less interruptions. I've also mentioned before in my Best Space Games video of No Man's Sky that there's somewhat of an issue with the repetitive nature of some of the resource collecting, although I appreciate that does disappear later on in the game, but it's initial hurdles that can be a little problematic. However, Hello Games have taken a bit of a risk by introducing an entirely different mode for expeditions here, and they've shaken things up a bit. This creates a very interesting result. Combining resource gathering and equipment upgrades with roguelike elements seems to be a formula for success, who would have thought? Then add in a nice interface which helps manage the whole experience, and you're off to a very good start indeed. The only real downside is that the whole expedition is time limited. From the point of this recording, there's around about 5 or 6 weeks left on the expedition, after which point it will cease to exist. Now the death loop mechanic is very nice, as I said, so I hope future expeditions use it again. It would seem like a bit of a wasted opportunity if they don't, so here's hoping. Or alternatively, let's hope Hello Games are willing to take more risks in the future and come up with other brand new ideas. Looking forward to seeing it. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.